This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale, and this is as big of a week in Arizona sports as we've had in a while. We have Arizona football against Colorado and pretty much a must-win game. We'll talk about that. We have Arizona basketball on Monday night against Florida. We'll make our picks for that. I can't wait to hear what Shane has to think on that one. I don't know. You could probably guess where I'm at for both these games, but we're going to find out. Shane, you decided to book us a double show in honor of this special week.
I did. Well, we only record one show a week, Eric. We're very part-time at this, but with everyone who listens or watches on a regular basis, and we met some a couple weeks ago at Arizona Stadium. Thank you so much for that. But yeah, since we got a big football and basketball game, we got Brian Jeffries. Usually you introduce the guest, but I think you set me up to do it this time.
I did.
Brian
yes.
Jeffries, the legendary play-by-play guy for Arizona, does both football and basketball, and of course baseball as well. We're going to chat with him about Arizona, Colorado, and Arizona, Florida. He's got a busy travel schedule coming up. And then, as you call it, Mr. Triple Double, Matt Muehlebach, to talk Arizona hoops. He called the Embry-Riddle game, probably the only time I can ever say that in my life, the Arizona Embry-Riddle game.
Yes, right.
Exhibition game the other day. And so we're going to get his thoughts on the basketball program as well.
It is going to be quite a show. Very excited to have both of those guests, two Arizona legends in their own right. But first, Shane, it is time for our opening segment known as Buy or Sell, which is presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Tell us about what you have in your hand here for those watching us on YouTube or wherever you may be seeing the video version of this podcast.
Well, first of all, I have to apologize because I need to check in with our guy, Chris Gronkowski, who founded Ice Shaker, on whether they got the licensing to have these awesome U of A logo on these bad boys, because he made these special for us, a red one and a Wildcat blue one as well. But this is the 40-ounce Legacy Series Ice Shaker. Keeps your drinks cold, keeps your drinks warm, whatever you want. It's awesome. And I love the little sippy thing here too. I got the handle, which I guess he said is like more like geared toward women, but I mean, I can appreciate a handle as much as the next man. So check them out; they're fantastic. And I'll provide an update soon on whether they got the licensing for the U of A logo.
All right, here we go, Shane. Number one, this is going to be quite the buy or sell that I've put together.
Yep.
After what we've seen the last few weeks, losing to BYU and Houston for the football team in very close fashion actually should inspire confidence heading into the last 5 games of the season. Buy or sell? I
will buy that it shouldn't. It reaffirms that they were. I mean, I don't think there's such a thing as a good loss, but that Arizona is playing. It just reaffirms that Arizona is playing very good teams very closely, and certainly they could have and maybe should have won at least one of those 2 games. Certainly, I think the BYU game more so than the other. BYU was kind of ripe for the picking, and Arizona blew it. And now BYU, I think, is kind of like ASU last year, where they were kind of figuring it out, but winning as they were figuring it out. And now they've hit another gear, and we saw that at Iowa State. And Houston's pretty darn good too. I know ASU was depleted in terms of missing Jordan Tyson and then Levitt toward the end of the game, but still, what Houston did going into Tempe and handing ASU its first home loss since Arizona beat them 59-23 in 2023. I made sure to get that score in there. Was very impressive. So yeah, it reaffirms that look, there's no such thing as a moral victory, and a loss is a loss, whether you lose by a point or lose by 100 points. But it goes back to what I said last week about Arizona heading in the right direction. But of course, you got to keep that momentum going. I mean, no one's going to care about that if Arizona falls flat in Boulder. But yeah, I think we should feel good about the fact that the program is certainly more competitive, and the fact that they've responded well to losses this year, whereas last year they just, it just seemed to be this downward spiral. Whereas they're still playing tough, and hopefully a bye week to get ready for Colorado will help too.
I certainly hope so, but I'll tell you, I am more confident in this Arizona team after watching, BYU. Obviously, really impressive. Every week I keep picking against them, and they're legitimate. I mean, they
Yeah,
to
I'm
beat
0 for
Utah.
3.
Yeah, I mean to beat Utah, beat Iowa State, and then Houston. 7-1 is 7-1. Say what you want, but
Yeah.
the fact that Arizona played them tougher than other teams, will just say, certainly inspires confidence. With that said, Shane, watching Colorado just get annihilated by Utah was enough, without spoiling your prediction,
Yeah.
was enough to make you at least rethink how you would have picked this game a week ago.
Yeah, I'll buy that too. I mean, it has to. Look, and I tweeted this, but there's one of two ways to look at it. Is either Colorado, maybe they just got to, Utah just demoralized them and they're going to lay an egg against Arizona, or they rallied together and they realized they need to practice harder and they're going to play their best game of the season against Arizona. And with our luck, it's probably going to be the latter. But yeah, things change from week to week pretty significantly in college football, and Brett Brennan alluded to that during his press conference on Monday. I mean, of course, he's not going to say, "Oh, yeah, we should go in and beat Colorado. They're not very good." But he said, "Look, it's any given week, crazy things can happen." And Colorado, they weren't too far removed from beating a then ranked Iowa State team before the Utah game, losing to a backup quarterback no less. So the wheels just completely came off for them. I will say again, without giving too much away for our last segment, that Colorado, every team is better at home. Colorado, I think there's an even bigger gap than most in terms of how they play in Boulder versus away from home. You just look at their record and the scores at home versus the road. So I think that's something to consider as well. But yes, it definitely looks more like a game that Arizona should win now versus a game that Arizona could win, if that makes sense.
Is it a must win?
In terms of our discussion last week, like keeping the fan base on board with Brent Brennan or getting them on board, yeah, probably. I mean, it changes from week to week, but then you go and lose at Colorado, your third straight loss after what Colorado just did. Even if you come back and beat Kansas at home the following week, is that going to really feel that good? So, I think in terms of the momentum of the program, and maybe even in terms of recruiting, I know our guy Matt Moreno says that doesn't generally matter as much to players, but I think that showing that you can win a game like this on the road, even against a Colorado team that obviously isn't nearly as good as they were last year, it is important. So in terms of keep momentum, I mean, the I really like how the team has shown resiliency after losses. Like I said, they played Houston very tough. They could have just folded after losing that game to BYU. They came out and played well, still lost the game, but you keep losing. Eventually, that's going to be demoralizing, and it could end up having that snowball effect too. So I think it could end up being a must win in terms of getting to a bowl game, maybe in terms of momentum and people buying into the program. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't I kind of bristle at that term a bit, but I think maybe at this point in the season, it's as much of a must win as it could be.
This is a must win, Shane. I'm just gonna simplify it. It's a must win.
You're a lot quicker than I was on that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a 4 point favorite. You've lost two in a row to two good teams. You're facing a team that got trounced last week by 46 points and showed
Yeah.
no heart whatsoever. I don't care if the game was being played in Tucson, Boulder, or anywhere else. This is a must-win game for Arizona, who is a healthy team. You look at Colorado's injury report; it is a full page long. Arizona had one player on there.
Yeah.
The excuses are out the window right now. You
I
have to
agree.
win this game.
I agree.
And
I agree they absolutely should win this game. And in a way, this was almost like worst case scenario because
yeah,
now it looks like a game that they have to win, right?
have to win.
And I think, I think one of the jobs the coaching staff has to have had this week is to say, look, guys, we can't lie down against Colorado and think this is going to be an easy win, even if we put in we got to keep working hard. We got to keep having that chip on our shoulder and having that message that this whole week and getting the players to buy into that, I think is as important as anything.
We're going to have the Brent Brennan conversation again next week if they lose. I don't want to give away my prediction for the game. You'll find out in the last segment after you hear from Brian and Matt Muehlebach after we talk with them. But my prediction is set in stone. I will say this: we will have the conversation if
Yeah.
they lose.
And I'll tell you what, Eric, I actually changed my pick about an hour before we started recording. So
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna find out. I'm very curious. Let's move on to we're going to talk basketball. We're going to do this fairly quickly. Women's basketball lost to somebody in an exhibition game that's really, really, really bad.
Not
I
quite
don't even
Embry-Riddle bad, but pretty bad.
pretty bad. I don't even remember the name of the school, and I wasn't going to look it up because it was that bad. Just want to pretend like it never happened.
Yeah.
I said after Adia left, I was like, this team's going to be bad, and they're probably bad. Becky's got the right approach, but they're bad. Over under 9.5 wins. I'm setting it right now for the year. What do they play? 31, 32 games, 9.5. Taking the over the under.
I think you should ask it over under 9.5 and how many times you hear trust the process this season, because I think that's going to be a key term. And look, I think regardless of what happens, I think Becky Burke is a great hire and she'll do well. With that said, I think the line, that's probably about where it should be. I'm going to be somewhat optimistic and take the over. I mean, they look bad. I got to think this is a team that's going to look much better by the end of the season, which doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be, an NCAA tournament caliber team, but a team that finds a way to win 5 non-conference games, looking at their schedule, and then maybe 5 conference games as well. If this was the Pac-12, or if their non-conference schedule was half as challenging as the men's team, I would probably take the under. But in the Big 12 and with the very unintimidating looking non-conference schedule they have, I think they find a way to get to 10 wins.
Okay. I am going to lean under, but it's not a solid lean. I mean, just you lose to whatever that was. Hopefully they bounce back and learn from that. So, I mean, I hope, I'm wrong and this team ends up in the teens. I think best case scenario is probably 13 wins, 12 wins, 13, 14.
Make a note, Eric. Let's revisit this question after their non-conference schedule.
Okay. Yeah. Which is all at home, by the way.
Yeah.
Every game's at home.
Yeah.
So
well, so was the exhibition.
Game. Yeah, they don't leave Tucson for a while. Let's hope Becky knew what she was doing with the scheduling.
But you know what? I'll say real quick, and I told Becky this. I don't know if I told her this on or off the air when we were recording in our interview with her, but I think Adia Barnes, for whatever else could be said about her, left behind a much stronger fan base than she had when she came in.
No question.
No question. When I covered the team over 20 years ago, they were a very good team under Jalen Bonvicini, but they were averaging maybe 3,000 fans a game.
Yeah.
And now they're getting about double that, I think, and in most games. Maybe not quite that, but it's definitely better than it was. And so having that home court advantage is going to pay off. Maybe not this season, but eventually.
I'm with you. I am completely with you there. So good point. All right, let's talk men's team. I don't want you to spoil your pick for the Florida game. I have no idea which way you're leaning, but I'm going to set the over-under at 9.5 non-conference wins out of 13 games that they play. Would you take the over or the under?
Yeah. So basically, you're asking if they can get 3 wins over their marquee opponents: Florida, UCLA, UConn, Auburn, Alabama, San Diego State. Did I get them all?
Yeah.
Because they really should. I would even say they had better win the other 7 games on their schedule.
Yeah.
And I think they'll get there. I think they beat San Diego State in Phoenix. I'd like them to beat Auburn at home. And I think they find a way to win at least one of the other 4. I'll put it that way. So I will take the over. I think it's a very fair question. And I think, I guess I said this about the football team. I just said it about the women's team. I'm going to say it about the men's basketball team too. People are tired of it, but I think that this will be a better team at the end of the season than at the beginning because you got a lot of new pieces. But I think they can be competitive right away. I think they're just going to be better as the season goes on. And I think part of that as well is Tommy Lloyd's coaching. He'll get these guys coached up as the season goes. But I will take the over. I think the line, again, is right about where it should be. But you take those 7 wins, and then they go 500 in the other 6 games, which I think is a reasonable expectation, then I'll take the over.
I am going to lean under again. 9 is what I would probably put the line at. I don't know if that's a fair line, so to speak, but I'm gonna lean under here. I think that this non-conference schedule is tough, and winning any of those road games would be borderline surprising for me. So I'm going under there. But I do think that this team is really, really good. I don't think their record will reflect how good I think they really are.
Yeah, essentially UConn. I mean, UConn is a true road game, but then essentially UCLA and Alabama are as well. San Diego State is closest to a home game, and I think it's probably the weakest of the 6 teams right now. So that's why I think they would be most likely to get a win over them. Auburn's at home. Florida's a neutral site. You'd like to think there be more U of A fans than Florida fans there, but who knows? So that plays into it as well. Again, I could go either way, but I'll lean over.
All right, fair enough. Well, first of all, before I get to my Harris auction read, we have Mike Kintner joining us on the show next week, general manager of the show, scheduled to join us. So looking forward to that. Before we get to that though, Shane, do you have any Shane's standouts for us this week?
Yeah. How about that triathlon team, that defending national champion triathlon team, Eric? They swept the top 5 and had 7 in the top 10 at the NCAA West National Qualifier race in Fort Worth, Texas. It was just the second time, and this is according to Arizona Athletics, the second time that a team has swept the top 5 spots at triathlon regionals. Only the second time ever. Kelly Wetland finished first overall. Arizona beat a 14-team field, including host TCU, which finished second. So next up, you got the national championships, which I believe are in Tempe on November 8th, where Arizona will look to repeat as national champs. So congrats to our triathlon team. I also want to just quickly mention the volleyball team. I know they lost a 4-set match to ASU. That new court, by the way, looks fantastic if you've seen it.
Yeah, it is. It really looks good. Yeah.
Yeah, and overdue, way overdue, but it looks really good. And ASU is the best team in the Big 12 in volleyball, and Arizona gave them a run. So I know there's no pride in losing to ASU in anything, but they played well. They competed well against ASU. So shout out there. And then the last thing, as of a week ago, Arizona had 2 players ever, I believe, score 50 points in an NBA game. And now that number is doubled. Aaron Gordon against Golden State, and then Larry Markkinen in Utah's overtime win over Phoenix. So just in the last week, we've had twice as many now. So shout out to Aaron and Larry. I wish we had either of those guys for more than a year, but they're killing it in the NBA.
Unbelievable. What a run we've had from those 2 guys. And it's, the first week of the season. Unbelievable. Hey, Wildcats, ready for your VIP moment? Harris Auction Casino is giving Caesars Rewards members a chance to win the ultimate VIP meet giveaway or getaway. Now through Friday, October 31st, your weekday play earns entries for the chance to win a 2-night stay, $250 in free slot play, $1,000 for dining, spa, shopping, and more, plus round-trip transportation play all week long. Then join us each Friday for your chance to win your exclusive Caesars Rewards destination. Harris Auction Casino is the only local casino offering the only card that gets you to over 50 destinations. With Caesars Rewards, your play earns perks that can be used at over 50 destinations nationwide. Really love this show this week. We have picks coming up in the 4th segment. We have Brian Jeffries coming up next, followed by Matt Muehlebach, Mr. Triple Double, here on Wildcat Country.
All right, Wildcat fans, let's talk about crushing your workouts with the Ice Shaker 40-ounce Legend Series shaker bottle. It's made from kitchen-grade stainless steel, leak-proof, tough as nails, built-in straw, soft touch handle, and yeah, it keeps your drinks cold for a long time. I got mine in both Wildcat Red and Blue. Be sure to get yours at iceshaker.com.
Shane, it's always good to have the legend, Brian Jeffries, the voice of the Wildcats, join us here on Wildcat Country. Brian, we saw your tweet. First of all, great to have you once again. We saw your tweet with your upcoming schedule. Can you kind of describe that for our listeners? And what does the next week and a half look like for you?
Well, it's always crazy this time of the year when you get the crossover between football and basketball. And so you never know from one year to the next because the football schedule is usually pretty steady. You know you're going to play on Saturday, but basketball is the one that changes year in and year out. And so we've got a Monday basketball game in Las Vegas. So this weekend's a good example where we've got football in Boulder on Saturday. We've got the opening of basketball season on Monday in Las Vegas. We've got a coach's show on Tuesday. And then, you come back home, you play a Friday night basketball game, a Saturday football game, more coaches shows coming up. And so, yeah, it is kind of crazy. But like I said, it happens every year and you just kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah, speaking of busy, I before we get into talking football and hoops, I want to ask you about the BYU game just from your perspective because Eric and I were there the whole time. We thought we'd be home a little early because it gave us a 5 p.m. start versus a 7 p.m. start, and of course that didn't happen. But how do you feel that time? You had that the weather delay, which I think lasted about an hour and a half, and then just how do How do you fill that time? How do you make sure your voice stays intact through all that?
Yeah, I tell you, we cheat. That's the bottom line because it was the second time this season that we've had a weather delay. The
Yeah.
opener against Hawaii was 2 hours, and I think Lamont and I that first game we probably went about close to 30 minutes, and then realized that they're not going to be starting soon, and so I just had the studio replay an earlier game. That's all you could do, and we did the same thing against the BYU game, and it was only an hour. But we didn't go for a half hour. We just probably went about 10, 15 minutes. And then what we could do is you could see the clock on the scoreboard and it hadn't started. And so we knew that it was going to be a while. And so we just replayed the game from earlier and you go, there's only so much you can do. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't talk for an hour or two. There's only so much. So that was the best way. We've done that before. It's been a while since we had delays like that, but you always have to have some in your back pocket.
All right, so let's talk Arizona football. Coming off a bye week, a couple of really tough losses, really close losses that I'm sure the team's frustrated about. What do you get in terms of the mood of the team, the focus of the team? Because some teams, those kinds of losses can derail your season. Other teams, they'll go the other way and they'll work that much harder to get over the hump. Where do you think this team is at?
Well, I can tell you about just the history of this team, and that is you'll go back to the loss at Iowa State, and they got beat pretty good in that game. I mean, there wasn't much doubt in the second half in that game, and so they bounced back from that really well. Didn't seem to have any ill effects, and I thought the same thing after the BYU game. Really didn't have any ill effects, and now you got the bye week probably helps, and we'll see. This group seems to be the type that can put a loss behind them. And I think every team's different in that regard, but just the personality of this team, the players that Brent Brennan has brought in, kind of a different breed. And they've been very consistent, I think, really since August when practice started, that every day they come to work and they do their thing and you don't really see, highs or lows. They're very even keeled. And I think that's good when you get into a situation like this where you have a couple tough losses and, two games that could have gone either way, give it a play or two. And so you would think that they would come back and play their best up in Boulder on Saturday. Doesn't mean they're going to win, but I think they're going to come out and play well.
Brian, when you look at this upcoming schedule, I mean, the expectation is Arizona probably will be favored in the next 2 weeks and possibly against Baylor, depending on. Would it be a disappointment to you if they don't end up qualifying for a bowl game?
Boy, that's tough, Eric. I think that last year they went 4-8. So in my mind, I just say, okay, you want to be better than the year before. If you're building a program, you want to make progress. Does that mean 5 wins, 6 wins, 7 wins? I'm not the one to say. I think that this team's good enough. They've stayed healthy enough that they've got a good chance, to get to 6 wins. I think these next 2 weeks are really critical. Okay, you're playing a road game in Boulder. That's not easy. Arizona historically has played pretty well up there, but year to year you never know. Colorado's obviously taken a step back after some significant personnel losses, and so can Arizona go up there and win that game? And if they can, then I think that sets them up for a homecoming game against Kansas at home, where they've got a really great chance at that point, maybe to get to 6 wins before they hit the road again. If they lose at Colorado, go back to what Shane asked earlier about kind of, okay, the mental state of the team. If you've lost 3 in a row, and then you've got to play a good Kansas team, and how do you bounce back? And so we'll find out over the next couple of weeks. But big picture, I mean, if you're just looking at this as saying, okay, can this team get to a bowl game? I think the next 2 weeks are very critical because they're 2 games that Arizona can win. And if they do, again, I think it puts them in a great spot. They become bowl eligible. Like you said, they've got Baylor at home. So maybe a shot there at a 7th win. And, you never know about the Territorial Cup. Those things are, as you know, they go either way.
I think you've seen plenty of those in person over the last 40 years. I have to ask you, we've talked about how college football and college sports have changed. So I want to make this more of a general question than Arizona specific. We're seeing coaches who don't succeed get fired quicker. James Franklin at Penn State, Billy Napier at Florida, Brian Kelly at LSU. And of course, there are whispers, among every fan base when your coach doesn't live up to expectations. Just your thoughts on that. Would you, if you were an athletic director, are you good with giving a longer leash, or do you understand that in this day and age when paying players is the way to go, that you better win or else?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with what school you're talking about, what kind of budget they have. And when you look at the payoffs that these schools could potentially make to James Franklin and Brian Kelly, for example, I don't know how they do it. I really don't. Now, if those guys get jobs, then I know that takes a lot of the burden off those previous schools. But just the same, when you're staring at the idea of paying out, 40 million or so to a coach over a number of years, I don't know how schools do that. Number one. And I think, Eric, you kind of referred to what Nick Saban said last week, and he talked about that the fact that the players are getting paid now, and it has ratcheted up the pressure on the coaches to win and win sooner, because they feel like, okay, now you can go out and buy talent instead of recruiting them and developing them. Now you just go into the portal and you find the best players, and depending who has the most money, then you bring in the best players if you have the most money, and then, well, okay, you've got the best guys, the highest paid roster, well, you're supposed to win. And if you don't, then then the pressure is huge, and then the donor base is unhappy and the administration is unhappy, and then you want to make a move. So it's a tough time. It really is. I don't, like I said, I don't know how schools deal with it. I think there's pressure on athletic directors now, because what are the, and maybe to go back to what you mentioned there, and that's expectations. And every program's different. The expectations at Penn State and LSU are massively different than they are at UCLA, for example. So, maybe they can afford to do that, where some schools, they've got to wait, or how do they go about doing it and, keeping the bottom line intact. That's a tough one if you're an AD.
Yeah, and we could talk for another couple hours about that, just that subject alone. I want to ask you one more football question, Brian, before you pivot to basketball. Noah Fifita, I think I've been really impressed with him this year. I think the Houston game was one of, I think, his best of his college career, and it's a shame that the team came up short, but I think his maturation has been fantastic. He seems like he's built a rapport with Seth Dagey, and he's just a guy you root for. I mean, he had multiple chances to leave, go somewhere else, and he stuck it out here, that despite the number of changes in the coaching staff. Just what are your overall thoughts on Noah Fifita and his maturation this year?
Well, he's an outstanding young man, first of all. I mean, beyond the football field, he's just a great leader. He wears it on his sleeve. He understands who he is and what he needs to be, again, away from the field, and he's up to the task. And so you love kids like that. Everybody around him loves him because he just has that persona about him. To go back 2 years ago, remember when he jumped onto the scene there after the injury to Jaden DeLora and had kind of a magical year there, and then last season slipped back a bit. You mentioned Seth Dagey, and I think Seth gets a lot of credit because when he got hired, obviously he was going to spend a lot of time with Noah, and it started probably even before spring practice. And I think that Seth has done a wonderful job, both mentally and physically, with Noah. I think that Noah's mechanics are better this year. They've improved. His footwork has improved. His decision making has improved.
Yes.
His release point has improved. Everything has gotten better, and I think Seth Dagey's had a heck of a lot to do with that. And yeah, being more mature, you have another year under your belt. That certainly helps. But he's. If you look at his stats just in conference play, and I mentioned this to Brent the other night on the coaches show, is that normally you get into conference play and you kind of expect your statistics maybe to drop a little bit because you're playing tougher competition. His have gotten better.
Yep.
in the 4 conference games this year, and that tells you a lot about where he's at right now. And so he's done everything you could ask for, and hopefully the rest of the team, one more play here or there, and they're going to win some more games this year.
Yeah, and I agree on decision making. I agree with you 100%. I think he's. I told Eric this. I think he this year, and knock on wood, he's rarely made any decisions that would outright cost the team the game. Like he won't always make the big throw, but he won't make a really bad decision that will cost the team a turnover or a big set. I think he's done fantastic in that. Switching to basketball, I think he missed the St. Mary's games. I think that was the same day as the Houston game. Then when they had that game and the Embry-Riddle game. Your early thoughts on this team? Obviously, it's hard to take away too much, but they're going right into the fire against Florida on Monday. Your overall thoughts on how this team shapes up?
Very talented, maybe the most talent top to bottom Tommy Lloyd has had, albeit a lot of it's young. He's got 7 freshmen on the roster, but I'll tell you what, when you take a look at those key freshmen and the 3 top recruits, these guys are older than freshmen. I mean, they just have physically, they are older than freshmen. And I think basketball smarts, they're older than freshmen. And so even though I've heard a lot of talk about the trending in college basketball now is older rosters now, and that's how you're going to win. And Arizona does not have an older roster. But I really think the raw talent makes up for it. And maybe then the fourth guy, and you saw him play really well against. Now Embry-Riddle is not a great barometer, but I watched him in practice a lot. Ivan Krvencevic is the kid from Germany, grew up in or was born in Russia and grew up in Germany. He to me is kind of the fourth now, the freshman that I think is going to make a big impact on this team. And so they've got they do have a veteran point guard. They've got 2 veteran big guys inside, even though Mo Krivas hasn't played a ton of basketball so far. He's been in the program a couple of years. Tobey Owaka is a senior. So they've got that core group. And Delhi's the same way. And then you've got the young guys. And I think it's a nice mix. It's a crazy tough schedule coming up. And next Monday, we're going to see a lot. I mean, Florida's obviously the defending national champions, and even though they lost some key members, they went to the portal and brought in some impressive talent there. So I'm excited to see that game because it's the first game, because it's Arizona, Florida, and kind of see where the Wildcats are right now. But I just have a sneaking suspicion that by January they're going to be hitting on all cylinders and be one of the better teams in the country. I mean, they already are, but I think it's only going to get better.
All right, Brian, I got one last one for you. I love to ask random questions. Which would surprise you more? An Arizona 8-win football team, including a bowl victory, or an Arizona Final Four in basketball?
Which would surprise me the most?
Yes.
It's a classic Eric question.
Yes, it is.
Wow, that is, that's almost impossible.
Basically, you're asking Brian, which program do you want to insult, and it puts them in a difficult.
No, because that's why I gave lofty scenarios here.
Yeah.
So that we're reaching for the stars here.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say, based on the schedule, football would surprise me more if they get to 8 wins.
Okay.
I think that they've got it in them to win 6 or 7. I'm not saying they can't win 8, but I think they got a great shot of winning 6 or 7 right now, as we sit here tonight.
Shane, I'm buying my Final Four tickets now. Just hearing that
No,
from Brian.
stop it.
I don't know how many years you guys know this, that over the years, and you see a team early in the season or preseason predictions, say this team is ticketed for the Final Four, and then you see another year where you go, well, it's a good team, but maybe it's not a great team, and then guess what? They make a deep run, and so I've given up predicting those things. I know Tommy Lloyd's one of the best coaches in the country. I know he's got great talent, and so nothing would surprise me with what he's able to do. They stay healthy with this group, sky's the limit.
Brian, when I was 16, I remember watching a certain Arizona basketball team and thinking they're going to be great next year. And that team won the national championship in 1997. So you just never know.
Shane's got it. You don't want my opinion. When Kevin Sumlin got hired, Shane will never let me live this down, Brian. I said to him, we need to get Rose Bowl tickets. Arizona's going to the Rose Bowl with Kevin Sumlin and Khalil Tate, and we all know how that played out. Brian, always good to talk with you. You're a legend, and we always appreciate your candor on the show.
And not to continue on that subject because it's certainly not one of our favorite. But hey, when you're right though, when the hire looked good.
Yeah.
You got to admit, the hire looked good. Now the results did not.
I think winning on the field is more important than winning the press conference, but maybe, Eric might disagree with me on that.
We saw that with Jed Fish. Jed Fish didn't win the press conference.
No,
Jed Fish won on the field in year 3. Just saying that. Brian,
known.
always great to talk with you. Thanks for joining us, and best of luck on your travels.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Shane, for the first time in a good long while, we welcome back our friend, Mr. Triple Double, Matt Muehlebach, who, if you were watching ESPN Plus on Monday night, you saw him call the game with Reggie Geary. How about that? 2 former players. Who needs an authentic play-by-play guy when you have Matt and Reggie? I'm all for it. Matt, great to have you back on. I have to ask you, and it's kind of a general question, how good is this Arizona team in your opinion? Like, should we have high expectations, or should we just temper them for now?
Well, I think a couple things. Yeah, I think we should have high expectations for sure. I mean, it's as talented and physically talented as I've seen in a long time. I mean, there's no one that's not, physically gifted, big, strong. It's as big and strong as a team as I think I've ever seen at Arizona.
Wow.
Are they as skilled as some of the teams where you've seen 4 or 5 NBA players on a team? I don't know. Time will tell. I think there are definitely a few of them. And I'll say this too. Like every year, every year two things happen. I go to the first Arizona practice that I go to, and I'm like, oh my God, this team's incredible. And then I do it every year. It doesn't matter what team it is. And then usually the first 2 or 3 exhibition games or non-conference, I say the same thing because you can't tell for sure until they play Florida, or until they play Duke or someone like that. But I will say I love the pieces, and I'll start with the number one piece. They have a senior point guard that can play, and I love his attitude. He's super even keel. If you think back to the Big 12 last year, I think one of the most underrated things that Jaden Bradley did was pressure didn't bother him. And so when you have a guy that can handle it and get into your offense and deal with and we know those teams pressure a lot, right? And so if he can avoid pressure, now you can just get into stuff like that. That's like step 1 on a college court or pro court or anything. But so I love that there's a senior point guard and then there's a lot of pieces after that.
Yeah, I think Eric's ready to buy his Final Four tickets after seeing Arizona destroy Embry-Riddle like they did. But no, not this time.
Not yet.
Not
I
yet.
don't think they covered. I don't think they covered.
I think the
There's
spread
no
was 100.
line on
I
that
think the
game.
spread was 100.5, wasn't it, Eric?
That's
First
right.
of all, somebody put up a graphic that it was 14-13 at one point.
Oh yeah,
And I'm
it was.
thinking, really? Do we really need to do that on the internet? Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Shane.
No. And speaking of my co-host, he continues to flip out about the fact that Arizona has scheduled a very, very tough non-conference schedule, kind of like they did last year. And then of course they play St. Mary's in an exhibition game, which is no slouch, and I love that they did that. Your thoughts on this team, especially with so many young and new players getting tested early against Florida and a lot of other, this gauntlet of a non-conference schedule they have?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love that Tommy Lloyd swings for the fences. I mean, I love that his sort of like he does it in a very hometown like good way, but he's kind of a swashbuckling, go for it, swing. Like I said, swing for the fences. I love his energy. I mean, let's not forget the Red Blue where you had Gronk, you had Shaq, you had the Beastie Boys. What's his name? Mixmaster Mike. I mean, Tommy's brought a level of energy that I'm not sure fans. I mean, I think we probably can see it and appreciate it. I'm not sure all the fans see and appreciate that kind of all in that Tommy is. And I think the schedule reflects that. So look, I'm all for being battle tested. And it probably took me a few years to admit this, maybe more than a few. But I think when I played, back in the late 80s, 90s. I think we had some very talented teams at the top of the pack, but it wasn't deep. And I think that lack of depth hurt us in the tournament. And I've always said this, Arizona had been more of it's a team full of like Ferraris. And if you get on the Autobahn, look out. Like we could beat anybody back. And we've been doing that Arizona's been doing that for 40 years. But when you get in a street fight, when you get in a rock fight, it wasn't that our teams weren't tough. They just weren't battle tested in that way. And I love the fact that Tommy's throwing the gauntlet down and let's go. And Reggie Geary on the game last night made a really good pointer in the shoot around before. He said, I like how they play like Florida, then it's a mid-major or two mid-majors, then it's UCLA, and then it's a mid-major, and then it's UConn. So there's a little bit of a breather. Look, they got to win those games, and those games can be dangerous if you play someone like a St. Mary's. But I think the breathers are going to be really good for them.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think back to, the gauntlet of a schedule that Arizona had back in the day. And, the Arizona finished, not just that, but the conference schedule when the Pac-10 was so good and Arizona finished tied for fourth the year they won the whole thing.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
That's probably the best example of what I was just saying, right? The team that won it played maybe the best Pac-10 in that era.
Right. And that's why I love about the Big 12. Now the football, it's kind of, you kind of sacrifice the football for the basketball in a little bit.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about a potential alpha on this team, Matt, because the Arizona lost theirs in Caleb Love, a guy who is, for better or worse, not afraid to take over late, shoot the big shots. Does Arizona have that guy on this team this year? And is it possible that it's, we talk about Braden Berries maybe being that guy. Is he ready to be that guy as a freshman, or is someone else going to emerge for that spot?
I truly think it's kind of TBD. I think we're going to have to see and how those games shake out. I think Jaden can certainly create stuff at the end of the games. I certainly think Burries can. We mentioned it on the broadcast, and I'm stealing this from Tommy Lloyd talking about Jaden's Braden's pace and the way he plays and the sort of speed and athleticism. He makes it look easy. He's like he's so smooth. He's an NBA player like right now. And I walked up to him right before the game started, and I couldn't believe how big he was and just how physical he looked. Like I don't know why. Maybe I imagined something that he wasn't, but he's looks and built like an NBA guard today. So I think he definitely can do that. But I think it is a little TBD.
Matt, you talked about number of NBA players on Arizona's roster. I'm going to set the line at 4.5 players on this roster that are in the pros. You taking the over or the under?
Let me think about that. I think there's two or three for sure. I think it's going to be a guy like Jaden Bradley. I think he's an NBA player. Time will tell, if he gets on the right team. Time will tell, does he shoot it well enough, to play in the league? But physically, he's an NBA player. And I'd say the same with Aristode and the same, Pete and Burris are going to be NBA players. So I think you take that right off the deck. Those other guys, I'm not sure. I'll tell you the guy I love, and I'm avoiding your question. The guy I love is Karchenkov.
I was going to ask about him. Yeah.
I love him. I think I don't know what his ceiling is, but I think it's a lot higher than probably a lot of people imagined when he came in. And he kind of came in as a guy that, people forgot his name. And there's all the McDonald's All-Americans, and he's physically like as good as he's so big and strong. It's just shocking to me. So yeah, I think it's right around that 4 to 5. I mean, it's a perfect line. I mean, you'd probably 50-50.
What do you think? And I always ask you this every year before the season. What's the ceiling for Arizona basketball this season? Realistically.
It's definitely a Final Four team. Definitely. I mean, it's that's the ceiling. And if you get there, you can win it. I mean, so
Right.
I'm including that, but they're physically strong enough. I think they have the depth. You never know. Depth is funny in college. It can come and go pretty quickly. Um, but I think they have the depth. I liked what Nelson did, like in the first two games, like just showing some, if you need to spell Bradley if he gets in foul trouble. So that was, I think, a positive. Um, they don't have a ton of depth at the 4 or 5. Like they're kind of playing three guys right now in that. But I think they can play small. Like I really, you know what? I mean, look, I think there's gonna be I'm not saying he's the X factor, but certainly Krivas, I think you could say if Krivas plays at like, okay, he's at an 8 out of 10, the chances go way up that Arizona goes further than we think, right? If he plays, 6, 7, I don't know. If he plays way below that, like I don't think he'll do that, but he's an X factor for sure. But I really did love the Koa Pete Awaka 4 or 5, and they're interchangeable, right? They're both basically fours, but they both are so strong and so athletic they can play the 5. And I think that could be a really dynamic 1-2 punch. That Koa Pete really passed it well. I was surprised at how well he passed it last night. Now, again, the competition isn't what he's going to see, but he handled it. He can really handle it for a big man.
Uh, you just when you said 6'7", and my 6-year-old son is crazy about the 6'7" thing. He would have laughed.
I
I'm glad.
know.
I'm glad he's not listening right now. Because
I know.
that's the first thing I'm trained now. Yes, I'm trained to think about this now. It drives me crazy.
I,
All
I,
right.
I asked, well, to your point, I got to throw this in because I have, I have one daughter that just turned 20 and another teenager, but I was laughing. I always throw stuff out maybe in the broadcast that, kind of a say hi to them type thing,
Oh yeah.
slay or, some funny slang. I said, how about 6, 7? They're like, Dad, that's already old. Like, you can't say that.
Oh, my 6-year-old would disagree. But
All right, that's
hopefully,
that's what I
I
said. I
don't
said
get
every
it.
time I look at
well,
Instagram,
but you
it's
know what, Eric? That's the thing is they want you to ask, what does that mean? And they just
I
laugh
don't
because
want
it
to
doesn't
know.
mean anything. All
I
right.
don't want to know.
All right. I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on. So Matt, give us your best guess. How does this rotation shake out? Like the starting five and some of the key reserves. Do you have a good feel for because Tommy Lloyd usually likes to narrow it down to 8 guys. Do you have a good
yeah.
feel for how that's going to shake out?
I think so. I mean, obviously I think it's going to be Jaden and Burries at the 1-2.
Yeah.
I think it's a lock that Del Orso's at the 3. And if you remember last year, and I think he's bigger, he's stronger. Everybody's documented that. He's their best shooter by far, in my opinion. Um, and Arizona played a lot better once Tommy Lloyd put him in the starting lineup. And I think it had a lot to do with the fact you have all these drivers and slashers and athletes that get to the rim. When you have at least one guy that can sort of spread the floor, it's going to open stuff up. I don't care if he doesn't take a shot.
Yeah.
Put him out there at 25 feet. He's going to spread the floor. But I think he's going to have a good year. So I think he's at the 3. And I think it's going to be, a mixed match at 4 or 5. It might be Krivas and Pete one game. It might be a walk and Pete another. I don't know. I think that could shake out, but that's your top 6 right there. And then I think it's pretty safe to say that Karchinkov and Aristote are 7 and 8.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, and it should be an interesting battle of the front court when Arizona plays Florida. They return a ton of talent from their front court from last year's championship team.
Yeah.
They had some big name transfers in the backcourt, but the front court battle should be really interesting to watch. How do you think Arizona matches up with the defending national champs?
I think that's a great point because that's their strength, right? They lost their two best players were their point guard and the wing. And so I think Arizona's strength is pretty balanced. Because you mentioned it earlier that they don't have a Caleb Love that's going to that's going to shoot, it's always going to average 19 a game. That it doesn't feel like they have that.
Yeah.
Burries may get there, Bradley may get there at times. But it's so balanced. That front court battle is going to be fun to watch. I think Arizona might have a slight edge in the backcourt though.
All right, Matt, last question for you. We're going to have you make a couple of predictions here. Not only Arizona, Florida, but Arizona, Colorado. How many of the 2 games do the Wildcats win at least one of them? And which one would you say is most likely?
You mean Arizona, Colorado football or Arizona,
Football. Yeah,
Florida
I'm having you
basketball?
pick multiple sports in this one. Yep.
Oh, well, I think Arizona's going to beat Colorado. I mean, I
Okay.
think the week off, they've been too close to winning. They should be like they easily could be. Although I'm a Bill Parcells guy, so I think your record is what it is. You know, you are what you are. Um, but they've been better than their record in a way, and so
Yeah.
I think they win that game. Colorado
Okay.
had nothing the other day.
Hear that, Shane?
I heard.
You know, I don't know anything about Florida other than I know they have a good front line. That's like all I know. But
They got a
I
pretty
like
good big
their.
name transfer from
Did
Boogie
they?
Flan from
Boogie Flan.
Arkansas.
Boogie Flan. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So he to replenish their
Yeah,
backcourt. They got another guy from Princeton who I think played 2 minutes in that game we don't
that's
talk about
right.
a couple years ago.
That's
So
right.
here,
And he
here's
was the, he
something.
was he
Here's
was the
something
best
interesting.
Ivy League player last year, I think.
Yeah.
So apparently they played Illinois in a secret scrimmage. The Illinois people say that they killed Florida, and the Florida people say that they killed Illinois. So I haven't seen
I love it.
a real determination
It's
as
like
to
after
whether
a
Florida's that good.
presidential debate when both sides claim victory.
That's right.
Right.
That's
That's
right.
that's kind of how I feel with this. All right, so go ahead.
Or,
Sorry to
or
interrupt you.
it's like the halftime show when whoever it is now any year, there's 70% of people say they killed it. Oh, they killed the
Yeah.
halftime
Yeah.
show, and then
Uh-huh.
the other
Yeah.
25 just say that was stupid, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you don't like the person, of course, they didn't kill it. But if you love the person, it doesn't matter who it is, right? No, I think Arizona wins, and the reason I think they win is this. Look at what they did to St. Mary's. St. Mary's is a solid like tournament team.
Always.
They're always the same kind of team that they have a little bit of talent more than you think. They have one of the best coaches in the nation. And Arizona was like they never, I mean, it got to 3 points, but what they win by 18 or 20. And like you said, I think one of you said earlier, they went and beat Ole Miss already on the road in a scrimmage. Was it a scrimmage or was it I think it was a scrimmage, not a real game. Either way, they beat Ole Miss. And I think that win over St. Mary's is probably more than people think it was.
And without Toby Awaka as well.
And without a Waka, great, exactly. I'd forgotten that. So I think Florida's got, defending national champ teams. I guess Connecticut, with that exception, or teams like Duke that literally just reload like with the top one or two players every year. I think that's harder than you think to just all of a sudden be that team the next year. And so I like Arizona's positioning, and I like it. I like senior point guard.
Well,
And there you have it.
I'm gonna
Right.
ask one
Yeah.
quick follow up, Max.
Yeah.
I got to
Yeah.
ask you the cactus logo, or at least a portion of it, has returned to the McHale Center court. And not exactly how it looked when you played, but any thoughts on that? I haven't been there since they added it. How does it look?
Have you guys ever seen? It was a great movie, I think, in the '90s called "This Is Spinal Tap."
I'm familiar with it. I've seen clips. I haven't seen the whole thing.
Well, there's a funny scene where they want to recreate Stonehenge on the stage, but the guy they wanted to be like 18 feet tall or something, but he thought it was 18 inches. So it was like these miniature Stonehenge things. This was the opposite. This
Yeah.
was they went with the Big 12 logo. If you see Kansas logo, the Kansas logo is massive.
Yeah.
It's like the whole court. And so I'm like, maybe they're just fitting in with the Big 12. But I will say this, I'm kind of just having fun with it. I love that they did the cactus. I think it was great. I don't think it's, and I like kind of the different colors on the court are pretty slick. I think they look cool. So I will say this too. I'm not one of the guys that gets too excited about logos or uniforms or blah blah blah. I lose interest
But
pretty
I don't
quickly.
know a single Arizona fan that doesn't. And I agree with you to a certain extent, Matt. But I don't know a single Arizona fan that doesn't love that cactus logo.
I agree. It's unanimous, right? It's just everyone loves the cactus. Um, And I mean, think about how cool was. By the way, I'm kind of extending that question or that conversation. How cool was it that LeBron was wearing the Arizona uniform
Yeah.
That
on the
it's
bench?
great exposure, and I mean that's what
I
you want
mean,
as a program. I wish he had the better jersey. I don't want that blue jersey, but
yeah,
nonetheless, I wish he had like the national championship white.
yeah,
Nonetheless, it's great
yes,
exposure for the program. You can't pay for that. Like that's PR you can't pay for.
you can't pay for it. And back to the court, I love change too at times. I am a traditional, I am a conservative person at times, but it's fun. Like go with some new stuff, like let things happen. And then you understand after a year or two, if you're like, hey, this is everyone loves it, it's great. You keep it. If not, maybe you change again.
Matt, always glad to have you on. You're one of our favorite guests to come on the program. It's just like sitting around, as we've always said, like we're at a bar having a few drinks, just
Right.
talking shop.
Which we should
Great
do.
to have- yeah, we
Hey.
should do.
Anytime you guys are in Tucson, call me up. We'll do it. We'll do the exact same thing, but with a nice beverage and something on the tube. So I appreciate you guys. You guys do a great job.
Shane, what a great show we have had thus far, but it is time for picks, and this is one of the more intriguing pick segments. We're going to go through the other games fairly quickly. I have a bunch of games on the schedule. Once again, you and I pick every Big 12 game, every ranked versus ranked, and maybe some other games that are intriguing. Including an upset special. We give 1 point for a spread pick, 1 point for an upset special cover, 1 point if they win outright, which you had last week with Memphis. 2 points for Arizona's game. You and I are both tied at 53 points for the season.
Hanging.
So a lot.
What did Teddy KGB say? Hanging around. Hanging around.
A lot on the line here this week, Shane. All right. Number one, let's start with our upset special. Who you got?
Well, let me find it here. I had it just a second ago. I actually have Temple as a 5.5 point underdog against East Carolina for the simple reason that number one, I love the slight home underdogs, and Temple cashed in for me, not literally, but earlier this year. So simple. Look at a home dog. They're at home, slight underdog, and Temple's overcome this before. So that's it. Simple reason.
I'm going Navy plus 6.5 at North Texas. Navy undefeated. North Texas quarterback threw for 600 yards last week. Look for Navy. Keep this one close, if not win the game outright. A game that I really love. We'll just go through some of these quick, Shane. Vanderbilt at Texas. Texas is giving 2.5 points now. You like Vandy. I like Texas to crush them as my play of the week. Any thoughts on that one?
Interesting. I mean, Texas is barely surviving against Mississippi State, and then
defense.
No. Yeah, maybe. But and do we know, is Arch Manning going to be good to go for that game or not?
I don't even think it matters. I don't care if Arch Manning plays or he doesn't play. I don't think it matters. They have a fifth-year kid that can play. I'll take my chances there. Play of the week material.
I'm on the Vandy bandwagon, so I'm going to ride it until the wheels come off.
Penn State at Ohio State. This game was billed as like number one versus number two. I know Penn State stinks. Penn State getting 20.5 against the number one team in the country. I actually think Penn State, with former defensive coordinator Jim Knowles from Ohio State, he was there last year on the national championship team, now at Penn State. I think they can keep this within 3 touchdowns, even with a backup quarterback. Maybe a dumb pick, but I'm going Penn State. You're going Buckeyes. Another one that I want to point out, Oklahoma, Tennessee, battle of ranked teams. Tennessee minus 3.5 at home. I'm going Volunteers. You are going Sooners. Any thoughts on those last 2 games?
I just think Tennessee's a little overvalued. OU hung with Ole Miss for 4 quarters. Probably a game they should have won once they came back. So I think Oklahoma finds a way. I think the top 5 or 6 teams in the SEC now are kind of separating from the rest, and I don't think Tennessee is in that category. So it's as simple as that. I think Oklahoma either wins or they find a way to cover. So it's a field goal one way or the other.
Houston, 7-1 at home, 14.5 point favorites against Rich Rod's West Virginia team. I can't give you logic on this other than a letdown effect for Houston, taking West Virginia plus 14.5. They're not going to win the game, but I think they can keep it close. You disagree?
Yeah, West Virginia looked a bit better last weekend, but I think Houston takes care of business at home. I mean, their only blemish on their record this year was the blowout loss against TCU. I think Houston, but I think the line's about right. But I think Houston 17 to 21 points.
We both like Baylor minus 4.5 against UCF. We both like Kansas State plus 7 against Texas Tech. I also like the over in that game. Kansas State's offense has been on fire since they played Arizona. And you finally are welcome to the bandwagon here, Shane, of fading Oklahoma State. We're laying 24.5 with Kansas against the Cowboys on Saturday. Any thoughts?
The Vegas keeps luring those points out at me, and I'm not taking the bait this time. I'm going to take KU to especially an angry KU team after losing to K-State, and they come home and put a whooping on OK State.
Cincinnati, 9.5 point underdog at Utah. I usually don't love to pick against Utah. You're taking the Utes.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough game. I'm taking Cincinnati. I know they've been on fire, but I'm not confident in that. Another game I'm not confident in, Shane. Iowa State is up to 7 over ASU because Sam Leavitt unlikely to play, and I can't back Jeff Sims, so I am taking Iowa State, even laying a touchdown. You're going to go opposite.
I'm going to hedge again a little bit, just because I did this a couple weeks ago. But if Jordan Tyson plays, I think ASU finds a way to keep it close. Maybe not win outright, but keep it close. But if Tyson's out too, I think Iowa State covers easy.
I was off base. You and I disagree on a lot of picks. I can't pick an ASU game right. I guess you and I did have. Did we have Houston?
I had ASU covering last week, so I was wrong on that one too.
Yeah, we both had ASU. I mean, I cannot pick an ASU game in general. I guess we had Texas Tech the other week. That's what I was thinking of. All right,
Yeah.
let's move on to the two games everybody cares about. We went through those. I love to talk my betting picks. Great. Let's start with football. Arizona's a 4-point favorite on the road at Colorado. I'm going to go first here. Must-win game. I don't want to I don't want to oversimplify it. This is a must-win game for Arizona. They are rested. I don't care where the game's being played. Colorado stinks. I think Dion is done in Boulder after the season. I think, for obviously he's had some health issues, but they stink. And there's nothing good to say about that Colorado program right now. I think they'll make it interesting. Give me Arizona 30, Colorado 23. What do you got?
All right. So, like I said, Colorado, I'll be a little kinder and just say they're not a very good team. They're next to last in the Big 12 in both total offense and total defense. They average fewer than one takeaway per game. I think they've got 6 takeaways all season. They can't, or at least shouldn't, be able to run the ball down Arizona's throat like BYU and Houston did. And their rushing defense is by far the worst in the Big 12. The question is, and I mentioned this earlier, whether we'll get the Colorado team that got humiliated by Utah or the one that beat a then-ranked Iowa State team. It'll probably be somewhere in between, realistically, but probably a bit closer to the latter because Colorado, for whatever reason, is a much different team when they play in Boulder. Logic suggests Arizona wins. They're the better team. I mean, I couldn't say with Houston. I think it was about even. BYU is better than Arizona. Arizona is better than Colorado right now. So, but I went back and forth on this. I was prepared to take Arizona. Here's the thing: I can't pick the Wildcats to win a road game until I see them win one.
Okay.
They've lost 5 straight road games under Brent Brennan, and Colorado has lost. They've lost a pair of close games to ranked teams at home: Georgia Tech and BYU, both by 1 possession. They won their other 3. So. Logic, everything I mentioned at the beginning of my prediction suggests Arizona should win, but I gotta believe I'll believe it when I see it. So I got Colorado 27, Arizona 24. I hope I'm wrong. I should be wrong, but I got to see it.
Come on, Arizona. I need the 2 points, especially with some of my risky picks this week. Cincinnati at Utah, Iowa State to cover against ASU, West Virginia at Houston. Come on, U of A, make it up for me, please, and cover this 4-point line. All right, Shane. Usually we sign off with a football game, but for the first time in, let's see, 7 months, something like that, 8 months, we get to pick a basketball game. Florida on Monday. It's 3.5-point favorite in Las Vegas. The defending national champions against an inexperienced Arizona team. We heard what Brian Jeffries had to say. We heard what Matt Muehlebach had to say. What does Shane Dale have to say?
I think there's a good chance Arizona will be better than Florida by the end of the season. I'm not sure they are yet, just because they have so many new pieces, and I don't think they know where they all fit yet, just because they haven't had the time. I know Florida has some new pieces too, but I think they're one of the few teams in the country that match up really well with Arizona in the front court, like Matt mentioned as well. And they returned some top players from last year in the front court. Their transfer from Arkansas, Boogie Flan, he's very good. I think it's going to be a close and highly entertaining game for those who aren't emotionally invested in either team. I think Florida leads most of the way. I think they hold on at the end to win by about 5 points. So I have Florida winning and just barely covering. And I'll just add, I won't be disappointed if Arizona loses. And again, there's absolutely no downside to scheduling and losing this game unless Florida just completely stinks the rest of the season, which is not likely. But I do expect Arizona to be competitive. They have enough new talent and returning talent to go toe-to-toe with Florida for 40 minutes. So I expect them to at least look the part, and a team that could, with a little more experience, get over the hump and win this kind of game later in the season.
All right, Shane, I told you earlier in the show that I was not sure that Arizona will win 10 non-conference games. I thought about it. I am going to pick the Wildcats to win this game. The line to me I think Florida should be more of a favorite. You're the defending national champions. You're facing an Arizona team that basically has what, 2 returning starters now? Is that right? Or 3, I guess if you look at ADO and Awaka and Jaden Bradley, but a really inexperienced bench.
Yeah.
I just have a feeling Arizona's going to come out and surprise the country. Arizona by 5.
I like it.
It's going to be a high-scoring game played in this upper 70s, 80s.
Oh, at least. Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. But look, I like your picks much better, and I hope that because of the Arizona Colorado game in particular, that you are ahead of me in our point system going into
basketball's
next week.
Separate, by the way. Basketball's separate, so we'll do that separately. 2 points for an Arizona game, 1 point for the other one. So we'll see what happens. You have Florida covering, I have Arizona winning. So we're just gonna, see what happens here in this game. Gonna be fascinating. This is the best time of year. We're gonna have a lot to talk about in November, but I am really excited and great show that we had. Thanks to Brian Jeffries. Thanks to Matt Muehlebach. Thanks to Shane Dale. I'm Eric Cohen, and thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.